Why can anxiety cause a stress response, e.g. fight or flight?
Blimey.
Or just, that's a kind of...
Yeah.
I'm just taking snippets of what...
Yeah. Well, I think it kind of goes back to basic survival. So if you kind of go back to kind of sort of evolutionary biology, anxiety is a fear response, and the kind of the original sort of function of fear, really, is danger. There's danger, and what am I going to do about it? And the responses are kind of like, fight. Okay, I'm going to fight it. Flight, I'm going to leg it. Freeze, which is rabbit in the headlights. And there's also immobilisation, which sometimes doesn't kind of get included, which is actually sort of one stage on from freeze, which is like sort of playing dead. So it's like if sort of cats catch a mouse. Sometimes they'll just go really floppy. Because freeze has... Rabbits, when they freeze, actually have some tension in their body. Animals that play dead kind of just go completely floppy. And they're not sure whether that's kind of... Whether it's like, okay, it might be easier to be eaten if you're floppy. It might be a less painful experience. Or it might be that the animal doesn't want to eat you because you're dead. It's dead prey. So it might leave you alone, and then you've got a chance to escape.
Okay. How can hyperstimulation affect you mentally and physically? Or hyperarousal?
Yeah. Well, physically, because it gets your kind of your nervous system firing. So you get a lot of adrenaline pumping through your system. Cortisol's in there as well, isn't there?
Yeah. And neuropinephrine or something.
Yes. No,
I've been looking it all up.
All these complicated names. Yeah. So you get a kind of rush of kind of chemical stimulants in your body to kind of prepare you for that. So, like, you notice it in your heart racing, dry mouth, sweaty, breathing. Your breathing can become quite sort of shallow and agitated. Although people kind of do it differently. People can kind of sort of hyperventilate in different ways. You can get quite sort of tense in your muscles because it's like it's almost preparing you for kind of sort of letting it.
I get my tight chest. So.
Yeah, tight. Yeah, absolutely. Which is why kind of often when people have panic attacks, they think they're having a heart attack because it kind of mimics a lot of the kind of symptoms of that. And I think emotionally, well, did you say mentally or emotionally? Or kind of
both.
Both, really, yeah. It can make you feel very wary in certain situations. So kind of you might go into sort of group situation and feel really, maybe even a bit paranoid, scared something's going to happen, or just checking. It might make you want to kind of be very withdrawn. Sometimes people just kind of want to sort of fade into the background a bit. It tends to make you very, very alert. So it's kind of like you're in kind of high alert mode. So in terms of with like sound, so you're kind of registering things much more than you would if you weren't in that state. So you notice things, and like sometimes you might sort of notice something in your peripheral vision. I think, what's that? Or just you're just, all your senses are kind of really, I think, on sort of hyper. People kind of get it in different ways. So you might notice kind of sounds, smells, things in your peripheral vision a lot more. You're just really, really on high alert because it's like, something, feeling, and that feeling of like, well, something awful might happen. I think it's well, for me, when I'm working with somebody with anxiety, some of the work is about finding what maybe the kind of root causes are. So where does this kind of come from? How come somebody has learnt to be more prone to kind of hyperarousal? So what's kind of happened in their history? What's happened in their background? But also kind of looking at sort of things that might help to kind of support you in the present. So kind of like sort of helping people to become aware of kind of when they start to get anxious, because I think often people aren't aware that they've got anxious until they've got really anxious. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
So actually, sort of like, there's probably been a build-up over quite a bit of time, and then you notice it when it's like, you know, when you really, really feel it. And I can't remember where this comes from, but there's kind of some evidence that for people who are used to be, you know, have used to being in a hyper-aroused state, that actually that's kind of sometimes with them most of the time, but they've become used to it.
Yeah.
So they don't notice it. So they're actually already kind of like pretty much, they're not quite on full alert, but they're pretty much already halfway there. And then it doesn't take much to then flip it into you being completely overloaded and into kind of...
Yeah. I think I might have that, because I kind of, the other day I remember I was getting off the train, and I realised it's also affected by my mood. If I'm in a good mood,
Absolutely.
I'm less anxious and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I was getting off the train, I was in an alright mood, and then someone hit me with their bag. Like, really.
Yeah.
And I mean, it didn't hurt or anything, but it literally made me like scream. And then for like, I remember I had to go on the tube, and I was literally like, oh my god, everyone's staring at me, I was freaking out. And
yeah.
It just put me in such an anxious, like, freaked out mood. And it's like, someone just hit me with their bag, like.
Yeah.
And I kind of forgot all social conventions. Like, the guy was like, oh, sorry, and I just looked at him and walked away. And it's like, he probably thought that was quite rude, but I just...
No, at that point it's like kind of like, you're in fighting for your life mode, really. So it does... you can't really access... I'm sure you know that from your thinking. It's really hard to access the part of your brain that does kind of cognition, that does kind of rationalising, because you're really being kind of fired in your amygdala. You know, I'm sure you know this from these. So it's all, you know, survival stuff.
I pretty much ran away from it.
Yeah, so it is like, right now, you have done something that's threatened my life, and I'm going to, you know, it's not like, oh yeah, you just hit me with your bag. That's okay. No, it's like, that's, and I think sometimes people find that a bit, can get frustrated with themselves, because it's like, but it's not rational, it's not logical, but I know that, and it's like, but at that point, that's not how your brain is working. It's not working from that rational, logical place. It's working from just kind of pure emotion, pure, oh my god, I'm in danger. So yeah, part of I think is kind of like learning how to kind of notice the signs maybe earlier on, that when you start to get anxious, because I think it's like people get so used to it that they don't notice. So part of what I'm doing is to kind of help to raise awareness around kind of what are the kind of maybe early signs in your body, and then what might you need to do at that point to help to calm you down. Because when it's got to kind of here, it's really hard. It's really hard to calm, isn't it? Because you're really in that kind of, and then you're, you know, kind of really feeling it's all firing off. And as you say, I think that's a really good point that you say about how mood affects it as well. That there can often be a kind of relationship, not always, but a relationship between kind of like your kind of self-esteem and how you feel about yourself, and feeling anxious, and the kind of two kind of can feed into each other. So on a day when you're feeling really, your confidence is feeling really low, it may be that you're going to be more prone to kind of having that kind of reaction.
Yeah.
So kind of working on that as well, the kind of like what might be going on about how people feel about themselves.
That sounds kind of similar, I just realised.
Okay.
But what happens to the body and mind during fight or flight?
It is kind of similar to kind of...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've just got one more then. Are there any factors that make people more prone to hypersensitivity? And would you call it hypersensitivity or hyperarousal? Is that the kind of...
I think you can, I mean, different people call it different things. I think either of those make sense to me. If you're talking about it in terms of the sort of flight, the flight, if I could say it, you do tend to talk about it in terms of hyperarousal. You could also have hypoarousal, which is kind of, that's the immobilising one, which is like, so hyper is you get on high alert, hypo is you just go I've forgotten your question. I'm waffling.
Are there any factors that make people more prone to...
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, I think it's... well, for me, you know, people learn to be a certain way for a reason. It just doesn't come out of the blue. Some of it is I think, around personality. We're all kind of born with a kind of with our kind of sort of innate personality, and it might be that some people are born kind of with higher levels of sensitivity than others. But then I think it also depends on the kind of atmosphere and environment that you're born into as to whether that kind of gets supported, well supported, or whether that actually that then can get increased. So if you are already potentially kind of have a high level of sensitivity, and then what's going on around you is quite stress inducing, you know, if you've got a lot of chaos or insecurity or things going on around you, that's likely to kind of increase those kind of innate feelings or way of being. And obviously, you know, well, I'm just thinking also kind of in terms of response to specific situations. So if you're looking at like PTSD, it you know, that it can be something as a response to having experienced a trauma.
Yeah, because I've been looking up, because at the start of the project I was kind of like, what do I call it? What is it?
Yeah,
kind of,
yeah.
I didn't even know if it was linked to my anxiety. I just thought I was just jumpy and that was something else.
Yeah.
Because I thought it might have been down to lifestyle choices. Because I know that I wasn't this jumpy before I did some things. So yeah. But no, when I was looking up, it kind of said, you know, do you have PTSD? And it's like, kind of, I don't think so. No, you know, I haven't had any kind of trauma, but so I was kind of confused as to where it came from.
Well, I guess it's kind of like you can trauma can be defined in different ways. So you know, for the kind of so trauma in terms of like so people surviving being in terrible accidents or attacks, or see, you know, people in combat situations. Is one kind of, you know, sort of is one form of trauma. You can also look at kind of trauma in a sort of cumulative effect of kind of if somebody's childhood has been kind of series of you know, if their parenting has been erratic or chaotic or abusive or neglectful or dangerous, or you know, that has a traumatizing, can have a traumatizing effect.
Yeah.
But it's a sort of cumulative traumatizing trauma. So, and again, you can, you know, so some you do see people who have PTSD because of their childhood.
Okay.
And as you say, sort of other factors in there, kind of like you can exacerbate. You know, if people often, sometimes people can kind of self-medicate with drugs and alcohol, and some of those can make it worse.
Yeah.
Even though they might make it feel initially okay or a bit better, that often they will ramp it up.